I was on my knees, staring up at the man who once called me father with eyes that burned through me. The air around him seemed heavier, as if the whole world was bending to his will. His voice, calm but cold, echoed in my ears. You had your chance, Femi. You threw it away? My heart pounded in my chest. How did it come to this? How did the child I denied become the richest man in the country, towering above me in wealth and influence? I remember the day Amaka told me she was pregnant. It was a hot afternoon in the village of Odoekoi. The sun was high, and the air was thick with the smell of the earth, sweat, and the distant hum of life going on around us. But in that moment, all I could feel was the weight of her words pressing down on me like a stone. I'm carrying your child, Femi, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but each word hit me like a hammer. I remember how her eyes, usually so bright and full of life, were dull and tired. She had waited for me at the back of her father's compound, the one place where we used to steal kisses and share promises. But now, all I could see in her was a burden. No, I had said, shaking my head like a madman. No, this can't be. Femi, it's true, she insisted, stepping closer, her hand moving to her stomach, still flat but full of the life we had created. You have to believe me. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. My mind raced with all the consequences of accepting what she said. My life would be over. My dreams of leaving the village, of becoming someone important, would be gone. My mother's words rang in my head, you must never let a woman trap you with a child. It will ruin your future. So I did what I thought was the only way out. I denied it. It's not mine, Amaka, I said, my voice cold, as if the words had frozen my heart. You must have been with someone else. I can't be the father. The look on her face when I said those words will haunt me forever. Her eyes widened, and her lips trembled as if she was trying to find the right words to change my mind, but all she could manage was, Femi, please, you know it's yours. But I turned away. I didn't want to hear anymore. I walked away from her, leaving her there with tears streaming down her face, her body shaking with silent sobs. I told myself it was for the best. I told myself I was protecting my future. But deep down, I knew I was running away from the truth. In the weeks that followed, Amaka became a shadow in the village. The once lively girl who would greet everyone with a smile became quiet and withdrawn. The rumors started soon after. Whispers of her condition spread like wildfire, and before long, everyone knew. Her family tried to hide it at first, but there was no hiding the swelling of her belly. I thought it would blow over. I thought people would forget, and life would go on. But it didn't. Every time I passed by the market, I could feel the eyes of the villagers on me, their whispers just loud enough for me to hear. Isn't that Femi? The one who denied Amaka's child. How could he do such a thing? He's nothing but a coward. I tried to ignore them, but their words cut deep. I started avoiding places where I knew people would gather. I stopped going to the market, stopped visiting friends, and spent most of my time in my mother's compound, hoping that if I kept my head down long enough, things would pass. But they didn't. And as Amaka's belly grew, so did the hatred in the village. They turned against her, blaming her for everything. Some said she had bewitched me, that she had used dark magic to trap me. Others said she was cursed, that her child would bring nothing but misfortune to the village. Amaka's father, a proud man who had always been respected in the village, became a shell of his former self. The shame of his daughter's condition weighed heavily on him. He stopped speaking to me, stopped acknowledging my existence. His once strong shoulders slumped under the burden of disgrace. But the worst was yet to come. The day Amaka gave birth was the day my life changed forever. It was a stormy night. The winds howled through the trees, and the rain poured down like the heavens were weeping. I was in my room, trying to drown out the noise with sleep when I heard it, a cry, loud and piercing, cutting through the storm like a knife. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it again, and this time I knew it was no wind. It was the cry of a newborn baby. The cry of the child I had denied. The next morning, the village was buzzing with news. Amaka had given birth to a boy, a healthy, strong boy. But there was something different about this child. Something that sent chills down my spine. The villagers said he was special, that he had a mark on his forehead shaped like a crescent moon. They said he was born with his eyes wide open, staring at the world with a knowledge that no newborn should have. Amaka named him Chijioke, meaning God is my portion. But the villagers called him something else. They called him Omen, the child of prophecy. I tried to stay away, but it was impossible. Everywhere I went, I could hear the whispers. They said the child was destined for greatness, that he would one day be the richest man in the country. But they also said he was a curse, that his birth would bring about the downfall of those who wronged him. I laughed it off at first. It was just superstition, I told myself. Just the ramblings of old women with nothing better to do. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were right. As Chijioke grew, so did the fear in the village. Strange things started happening. Crops failed, livestock died, and people fell ill with strange diseases. The villagers whispered that it was the child's doing, that he was punishing them for the way they treated his mother. Amaka, however, seemed untouched by the misfortune. She became stronger, more confident. She walked through the village with her head held high, no longer the broken girl I had left behind. She never spoke to me again, never even looked my way. It was as if I didn't exist to her anymore. But the child was different. Every time I saw him, I could feel his eyes on me, watching me, judging me. He never smiled, never laughed like other children. He was always quiet, always observing. The way he looked at me made my skin crawl. I tried to avoid him, but in a small village like ours, it was impossible. He was always there, always watching. And every time our eyes met, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Years passed, and Chijioke grew into a man. A tall, strong man with a presence that commanded respect. He left the village to study in the city, and for a while, things seemed to return to normal. The crops grew again, the livestock thrived, and the villagers slowly forgot about the dark times. But I didn't forget. I couldn't. I knew that one day, Chijioke would return, and when he did, he would come for me. And he did return. But not as the boy I once knew. He returned as a man of immense wealth, a man who had the world at his feet. The news spread like wildfire through the village. Chijioke had become the richest man in the country. The village erupted in celebration. They sang his praises, danced in the streets, and thanked the gods for blessing them with such a son. But I couldn't join in the celebration. All I could feel was dread. I tried to keep a low profile, to stay out of his way, but it was no use. He knew. He always knew. The day he came to the village, the whole place came alive. People lined the streets to catch a glimpse of him, to see the boy who had become a legend. I stayed in my house, hoping that he would forget about me, that he would let me live out my days in peace. But as the sun set and the villagers returned to their homes, there was a knock on my door. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Standing there, dressed in a suit that spoke of wealth and power, was Chijioke. His eyes, those same eyes that had haunted me for years, stared down at me with a coldness that froze my blood. "Femi," he said, his voice calm but with an edge that made me tremble. "We need to talk." He didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped inside, his presence filling the small room. I could barely breathe, the air thick with tension. "You know why I'm here," he said, his voice low and steady. I nodded, my mouth too dry to speak. "You denied me, Femi," he continued, taking a seat at my table. "You denied my mother, and you denied me. But look at me now. He spread his arms wide, a gesture that seemed to encompass the whole world. I have everything, Femi. Power, wealth, respect. But there's one thing I don't have. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto mine. I don't have you in my life. And I don't need you. But I wanted you to know what you gave up. He paused, letting his words sink in. You could have been a part of my success. You could have shared in my wealth. But instead, you chose to walk away. Now, you live in your small world while I rule over many. I could only look down, the weight of his words crushing me. I wanted to explain, to apologize, but the words stuck in my throat. The regret was too much to bear. Chijioke stood up, his expression softening slightly, but his eyes remained cold. I came here to show you what you missed out on. Now you know. And now, I'm leaving. He turned to leave, but then he stopped, looking back at me with a hint of something I couldn't quite place, pity, perhaps. One last thing, Femi. Amaka has denied you access to me. She made it clear she doesn't want you near me. And I respect her wishes. I wanted to beg, to plead for a chance to make things right, but I knew it was too late. He walked out, leaving me alone with my regrets and my shattered dreams. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself sinking deeper into despair. The village continued to celebrate Chijioke's success, while I was left behind, a man without a future and haunted by the past. I tried to reach out to Amaka, to seek forgiveness, but she was unyielding. She had moved on, building a new life far away from the village. She had become a successful businesswoman, someone I had no chance of ever reaching. And so, I sit here, in my small, empty house, surrounded by the echoes of my past mistakes. Chijioke's success is a constant reminder of what I lost. The child I denied is now a man who rules over everything, while I am left with nothing but the cold, empty silence of my own regrets. In my quiet moments, I wonder if things could have been different. If I had only accepted the responsibility, if I had faced my fears, perhaps I would have been a part of something greater. But now, all I have are memories and the harsh reality of the life I chose. As I sit by the window, staring out at the village that once was my home, I can only hope that someday, someone will learn from my mistakes. That they will face their responsibilities head-on and not let fear or pride stand in their way. But for now, all I can do is live with the knowledge that I had a chance at greatness, and I threw it away. And in the end, that knowledge is the heaviest burden of all.